Progress.
Let's turn on all the recordings.
Cloud started.
Chambers is good.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's hybrid stated meeting. At this time, will all members on Zoom please turn on their cameras for verification purposes? Thank you. We are ready to begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please turn off all electronic devices. All electronic devices. Please turn off all electronic devices. Mr. Majority Leader.
Good afternoon and welcome to the stated meeting of January 20th, 2022. I am Majority Leader Keith Powers and I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. If you'd like to follow along, the agenda for today's meeting is posted on the City Council's website.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please ask for a roll call.
Abreu.
Aye.
Ariola.
Aye.
Aviles.
Aye.
It's a roll call. You can say here.
Thank you.
Presente.
Barron.
Here.
Botcher.
Here.
Brannon.
Here.
Brewer.
Here.
Caban.
Present.
Carr.
Present.
De La Rosa. Dinowitz.
Present.
Farias.
Present.
Felice.
Present.
Gennaro.
Here.
Gutierrez.
Here.
Hanif.
Here.
Hanks.
Present.
Holden.
Here.
Hudson.
Here.
Joseph.
Here.
Kagan. Krishnan.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Marte.
Here.
Mealy. Menon.
Here.
Moya.
Here.
Narcisse.
Present.
Nurse. Osei.
Present.
Palladino. Wrestler.
Present.
Richardson Jordan.
Here.
Riley.
Present.
Rivera.
Present.
Salamanca.
Present.
Sanchez. Shulman.
Here.
Stevens.
Present.
Ung.
Here.
Velasquez.
Presente.
Williams.
Here.
Juan.
No.
Councilmember Juan. Thank you. Yeager.
Here.
Thank you. Okay. Vernikoff.
Present.
Borelli.
Here.
Brooks Powers.
Present.
Powers.
Up here.
Ayala.
Present.
Speaker Adams.
Present.
Thank you. We'll now have today's invocation, which will be delivered by the Reverend Michael Livingston, Senior Minister at Riverside Church, located at 490 Riverside Drive in Manhattan.
Let us pray. Gracious, creating, loving God, be among us in this moment and beyond. The New York City Council begins a new year as a new council. And dear elected friends, we are watching you, with you, hoping the best for you, praying for you, that the one God of all, by the many names we know her, the many forms he takes, will be among you, and that you will listen to one another as if each one of you bears the image of God on your face, as if God speaks through each one. What an amazing opportunity and challenge awaits you to represent the people of this great city, alive with the languages and colors, cultures and customs of the whole world. We dare to believe and trust that in New York City we can live together as one people, love one and all as we choose, enjoy the justice of God laid bare, made plain, protected in policies and practices that privilege no borough or class, color or religion among us, but seeks to attend with justice and compassion to the most vulnerable among us, to ask of those most secure, to give as though their well-being depended upon the well-being of others, as surely it does. God, come among us, this council, led for the first time by an amazing plurality of women, of color, surely a sign these days of Emmanuel, God with us. We'll know your work goes well as more people move from the streets into safe and secure housing, as children learn in public schools supported and equipped to nurture their God-given gifts, as older New Yorkers are supported to age with dignity in their homes and neighborhoods, as workers are paid living wages and share in the abundance our city offers, as policing is administered with restraint and regard for the humanity inherent in every person, in every encounter, as public housing is rehabilitated into living spaces, homes of dignity and grace, as the carceral system becomes more humane, restorative, safe for officers and inmates alike. God of the universe, the city, the citizen, hear our prayer, heal our city, bless this council, each member, the work they do together for us all. In your many names we pray. Amen.
Thank you. I'm now going to call on Councilmember Sean Abreu to spread the invocation on the record.
Thank you, Majority Leader. I would like to thank Reverend Livingston for being here today. Through your work at Riverside Church and your advocacy for underpaid workers, you have served the city of New York and the people of District 7 with distinction, kindness, and care. It is also not lost upon us that we just had Martin Luther King's birthday, and right at Riverside Church is where he spoke about the fierce urgency of now. And so that's what we're going to keep into perspective as we carry our work out as public servants. I motion for unanimous consent to spread the invocation in full upon the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Abreu. We'll now have the adoption of the minutes by Councilmember Chris Marte.
I make a motion that the minutes of the stated meetings of December 9th, 2021 and December 15th, 2021 be adopted as printed.
Thank you. Messages and papers from the mayor.
M9, Mayor's Veto and Disapproval Message of Introduction Number 2443A of 2021.
Refer to land use.
Communication from city, county, and borough offices.
None.
Petitions and communications.
None.
Land use call-ups.
M10, NYPD Bronx Special Victim Services.
I would now ask that the clerk takes a roll call vote on all of today's land use call-ups.
Abreu.
Aye.
Thank you. Ariola.
Aye.
Aviles.
Aye. Aye.
Barron.
Abstain.
Botcher.
Aye.
Brannon.
Aye.
Brewer.
Aye.
Caban.
Aye.
Carr.
Aye.
De La Rosa.
Aye.
Dinowitz.
Aye.
Farias.
Aye.
Feliz.
Aye.
Gennaro.
Yes.
Gutierrez.
Aye.
Hanif.
Aye.
Hanks.
Aye.
Holden.
Aye.
Hudson.
Aye.
Joseph.
Aye.
Kagan. Krishnan.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Marte.
Aye.
Mealy. Menon.
Aye.
Moya.
Aye.
Narcisse.
Aye.
Nurse.
Aye.
Jose.
Aye.
Palladino.
Aye.
Rustler.
Aye.
Richardson Jordan.
Abstain.
Riley.
Aye.
Rivera.
Aye.
Salamanca.
Aye.
Sanchez.
Aye.
Schulman.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
Ung.
Aye.
Velasquez.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Juan.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Vernikov.
Aye.
Borelli.
Aye.
Brooks Powers.
Aye.
Powers.
Aye.
Ayala.
Aye.
Speaker Adams.
Aye.
Today's land The land use co-ops have a vote of 48 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 abstentions. Thank you. And just as a reminder, I've been asked to remind folks just to please keep your masks on while you're inside the chamber. Thanks. We're now going to have communication from Speaker Adrian Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first full stated meeting of 2022, and I reiterate, before we go any further, I'd like to remind all members that masks are required to be worn throughout the meeting, even when speaking. On Sunday, January 9th, tragedy struck our city. In a heartbeat, 17 New Yorkers died in a horrific high-rise fire in the Bronx. 8 of them were children. 5 of the victims were members of the same family. This was a devastating event and the worst fire in our city in over 30 years. We mourn the deaths of those who lost their lives. Haji Dukare was 49 years old. His wife, Haja, 37 years old, and their 3 children, Mustafa, 12 years old, Mariam, 12 years old, and Fatumata, 5 years old. We also mourn the death of Fatumata, 50 years old, and her 3 children, Fatumala, 21 years old, Nayomaisha, 19 years old, and Mohammed, 12 years old. We also lost Fatumata Tunkara, 43 years old, and his son Omar, 6 years old. We mourn the death of Haji Jawara, 47 years old, and his wife Isatu Jabi, 21 years old. Sarah Jane, 27 years old. Seydou Touré, 12 years old. Hawoma Mamadou, just 5 years old. And Usman Kante, 2 years old, the youngest victim of this horrific, horrible fire. This City Council is committed to working tirelessly to prevent these kinds of tragedies from happening, so no New Yorker ever has to experience such heartbreak again. Protecting the lives of tenants is a must, and we have established a special task force to focus on this. I would also like to acknowledge the senseless killing of Crystal Byron Nieves. Crystal was working as a cashier at Burger King in East Harlem, where she was shot to death during a robbery. She was just 19 years old and an extended family member of our beloved Deputy Speaker, Diana Ayala. We also mourn the death of several New Yorkers who passed away while simply doing their jobs. We lost deliveristas Salvador Navarrete Flores and Torino Rosendo Morales. Salvador died when he crashed into an illegally parked car in Manhattan, and he was 31 years old. Torino was killed when he was hit by a box truck, also in Manhattan. He was 37 years old. We also lost Yao Panma. He was a Chinese immigrant who was collecting cans when he was brutally attacked in Manhattan last April. Yao died of his injuries on December 31st. He was 61 years old. We mourn the death of FDNY Lieutenant Joseph Maiello, who died of natural causes on December 26 while he was at his firehouse in Staten Island. Lieutenant Maiello was 53 years old. And I would also like to send condolences in my name and in the name of the entire City Council to our exceptional colleague, Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala, whose mother, Adelita Crespo, passed away recently. We are sending you all of our love, and we keep you and your family in our prayers. It has been an extremely tough time for Deputy Speaker Ayala. Beside the passing of her mother, Crystal Byron Nieves was her nephew's cousin. This weekend, we also learned about the unthinkable loss of Michelle Alyssa Go, Michelle was pushed to her death as she waited for a train at the Times Square subway station. Michelle was described as a kind, sweet, and generous soul. As we mourn her loss, we must remember how she lived with a commitment and a passion to help others through her volunteer work. The legacy of her death should move us forward as a city to address the gaps that have led to such tragedy. Michelle was just 40 years old. As we continue to battle COVID, and COVID has hit us very hard, we must ensure the city offers free, easy, and equitable access to vaccines and testing across all neighborhoods. Although it looks like the Omicron variant surge has reached its peak and it's on a downturn, we must remain vigilant and not let our guard down at all. Keep wearing a mask. Keep social distancing. Keep getting tested and vaccinated or get boosted if you haven't already done so. As of yesterday, January 19th, 37,122 New Yorkers died from COVID. Let us stand now and pause for a moment of silence for the victims of the horrific Bronx fire, for Crystal, for Michelle, for Salvador, for Torino, for Yaupan, for Lieutenant Maiello, for Adelita, and for all of the lives we lost to the pandemic. Thank you. You may be seated. On Saturday, we had a tense and very scary moment coming out of Texas. A man held 4 people hostage at a synagogue during the Sabbath morning service. Fortunately, after an 11-hour standoff, an FBI team was able to rescue the hostages at the Beth Israel congregation in Colleyville. We express our solidarity with New Yorkers of Jewish faith, as well as those across the country. We are grateful this tragic incident did not end in the loss of life for any worshipers, because we know that places of worship have unfortunately become targets. No one anywhere should be afraid to enter their religious institutions to pray, and I stand with the people of good conscience everywhere to demand an end to hatred, bigotry, and violence. January 27th marks International Holocaust Remembrance Day, a day when we commemorate and honor the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and the millions of others who were brutally murdered by the Nazis. We remember these tragic victims of genocide, and we pledge never again. On Monday, we remembered the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a leader who devoted his life to racial, social, and economic justice. I joined New Yorkers across the city to celebrate his life and legacy. But we cannot just commemorate him on his birthday. We must work to continue his vision of justice and equity every single day. We must honor his legacy by continuing the struggle, our struggle, to ensure each and every one of us has the justice and equality we deserve in this country and in our city. There is an important achievement that I want to acknowledge in honor of a legendary poet, writer, teacher, and activist who was among this country's greatest heroes. Last week, Dr. Maya Angelou became the first African-American woman to have her image engraved on a quarter. This is a victory for all of us. Dr. Angelou made our country better, and she has a very special place in my heart. I remember as if it was yesterday when she delivered the keynote address at my graduation ceremony at Spelman College. I will never forget that day because I was in awe as she spoke. Her words still resonate in my ears. The tenor of her voice reverberated in my heart. She inspired me then, and she continues to inspire me today. We are beginning a new legislative session. a new and historic legislative session. This is the most diverse city council ever. For the first time, it is led by an African American speaker, while the majority of the members serving in the council are women. Undeniably, undeniably, this diversity makes us stronger. At our last charter meeting, I announced a few members of our council's leadership team, including Councilmember Diana Ayala as Deputy Speaker, Councilmember Keith Powers as Majority Leader, and Councilmember Sylvina Brooks Powers as Majority Whip. Today, I want to thank them and announce some new members of the leadership team that I'd also like to thank. Our leadership team also includes Councilmember Gail Brewer, Councilmember Justin Brannon, Councilmember Rafael Salamanca, and Councilmember Crystal Hudson. Together, this group will help guide our shared efforts to support members, craft equitable policies, and execute our vision for this legislative session. And I am confident that together, we will move our city forward. Now, before I dive into the agenda of the day, I want to thank from the bottom of my heart the entire central staff of the City Council. Yes. They have worked hard to keep this legislative body running, supporting each member and tirelessly serving on behalf of New Yorkers. Thank you for being the backbone of our legislative body. I also want to give a special shout out to the Legislative Documents Unit for their tireless work for this meeting. So thank you, Jonathan Etrix. Thank you, Ruthie Del Franco. Thank you, Matt DiStefano. Thank you, Billy Martin. Thank you, Yvette Molina. Thank you, Mike McSweeney, as well. I also want to thank Lance Pallavi, Associate General Counsel. Jeff Baker, Director of the Legislative Division, for their tireless work, and a special mention to Jason Goldman for your work as well. Thank you. During this legislative session, we will tackle the multiple crises our city is facing. COVID-19 has widened the gaps in our economic and public health systems. This City Council will take action, and we will address economic inequality, gun violence and community safety, healthcare inequalities, and racial justice. New Yorkers want good-paying jobs. They don't want to choose between putting food on the table, paying rent, or paying medical bills. They want to feel safe and live without that constant fear of not making ends meet. We cannot thrive as a city as long as all New Yorkers lack the same economic opportunities we need to succeed. For far too long, communities of color have been left behind, a situation highlighted and exacerbated by the pandemic. In the coming days and weeks, this council will work to craft an equitable budget to help all New Yorkers and ensure that our city's policies improve the lives of every resident. Together, we have an obligation to fight for equity and make every community in New York a better place to live, work, and raise a family. Addressing healthcare inequities is also at the top of my agenda. Communities of color were the hardest hit by the pandemic. We suffered the most, yet we were the last ones to get the necessary resources to battle this unprecedented pandemic. We also must address the issues of mental health care to ensure that resources actually reach those in greatest need and are available to communities. This is not only an issue of public health, but we see how mental health is intertwined with public safety. Another important issue, of course, is child care, and this is not new. We have to be able to provide child care for every parent or guardian who needs it. There is no excuse not to. New York is the richest city in the world, and we should provide quality health care for our families. We need a strong and equitable school system that meets the needs of children in every neighborhood with access to a quality education. We will also seek to advance the interests of hardworking New Yorkers across our city whose labor is essential day in and day out to make this city run. Our commitment to the principles of the labor movement will help advance the rights of workers as well as drive the economic well-being of our city. One of the most important issues is public safety. New York City cannot thrive without safety and a sense of security when we go to work, when we go to school, when we go to the supermarket, or just walking across the streets in our very own communities. Gun violence has increased in the last 2 years of this pandemic. We now know the same communities that have been the most harmed by COVID are besieged by violence. We need to address public safety in a comprehensive and holistic way that invests in establishing strong communities. Every stakeholder has a role to play to create a safe city, from public health workers to community-based violence interrupters, from law enforcement to youth organizations, from workforce development groups to others who increase economic opportunities. We have a collective responsibility to address public safety, and the most effective approach is one that brings us together to address underlying issues so we can prevent gun violence before it even occurs. Members, we're on a mission. Besides having the best budget possible for all of our communities, this council will pass impactful legislation and ensure we have oversight of every city agency. Together, we will get New York City back on its feet and make it the fairest and best city in the entire nation. Before we vote on the committee chairs and other leadership posts, I want to share with you my guiding principle. I shared it with you during our charter meeting when I was elected speaker. It's helped me get through the most difficult times of my life. And you all are going to get tired of hearing me say it, but every morning I wake up on purpose with a purpose, and that is to serve the people of this great city. Today, we're announcing the committee and subcommittee chairs. This is a team that will help us lead New York City throughout our recovery. We have a very diverse team that is a true snapshot of our diverse city. I want to thank all of the chairs of the committees and subcommittees and all of the members of each committee, as we're on a mission to make this city more affordable, with better paying jobs, with a public education system that works for all of our children, with affordable health care and child care, affordable housing where no one is left behind. I thank you for your leadership. I also want to acknowledge the members of each committee as well, who will play an important role in oversight and addressing the critical issues of our city. I am so very proud of each and every single one of you, and I know that you will help us lead to accomplish our mission, the mission of this great city council of the city of New York. Thank you, and with that, I now turn it back over to you, Majority Leader Powers.
Thank you, Speaker Adams, and thank you for your leadership, and congratulations to everyone here today. We will now move to discussion of general orders. This is the section of the meeting is for comments only on the items that we'll be voting on today. We're going to first call on Councilmember Oswald Feliz.
Thank you so much. 2 Sundays ago, we saw a fire devastate the heart and the soul of the community that I represent. 17 innocent lives lost, including 8 babies. I want to thank everyone that has been there with these affected families. I want to thank the fire department. We saw them risking their own lives to save the lives of the innocent people. I also want to thank the Red Cross and the Office of Emergency Management who have been here every single step of the way, ensuring that affected families received all the resources they needed, including food, water, shelter, clothing. And I also want to thank our entire city, including all of my colleagues, for showing so much love and being there every step of the way to make sure that these affected families receive everything they needed. The Bronx continues to be plagued by one challenge: fire. Some of the worst, deadliest fires have occurred in the Bronx, including in 1990, 87 lives lost in a deadly fire, including 5 years ago, 13 innocent lives lost in a deadly fire, and including 2 Sundays ago, 17 innocent lives lost. We need a system that protects our families, a system that protects our tenants, and that's why I'm proud to be chairing the Twin Parks Citywide Task Force on Fire Prevention, and I'm looking very forward to working with all of you to build that better system, a system that helps ensure that a similar tragedy never happens again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Feliz. I just say on behalf of this entire City Council, I think we're with you in your district right now and look forward to working alongside you on that.
Thank you.
We're now going to hear from Councilmember Charles Barron.
Time starts now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention that the speaker failed to mention the death of my mother, Daisy Barron, who died as a 96 years of age in December 14th. She failed to mention her, so I just want to thank all of you who did reach out and express your condolences. I couldn't tell you how much your words of comfort meant to me and my family. Secondly, on the general order calendar, we're going to have all the chairs selected, and I'll mention more when I explain my vote. But the reason why I'll be abstaining from this process, because it continues to be a process where outsiders select the chairs, and outsiders influence who becomes the speaker. And the speaker, in this case, to me, is not independent and too influenced by law enforcement and by the real estate industry, which I think is going to be reflected in the budget and legislation that comes before us and in land use items that come before us. So I will be appealing for you to be independent. I'll be appealing for you to make sure that during this time of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, when he said that sometimes the white power structure creates manufactured Black leaders who are more committed to the power structure, more committed to the real estate industry than they are to the people, no matter how much the flowery rhetoric goes forward. So I hope that we become the conscience of this city, that we have to be the checks and balance to the mayor and not a go along, get along for the real estate industry and law enforcement, a budget that gives more money to police than poverty. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak before we move forward? Okay. With that being said, we'll have the report of the special committees.
None.
We have the reports of standing committees.
Report of the Committee on Rules, Privileges, and Elections. Pre-considered Resolution 1 and M11, Council Rules and Committees.
Coupled on general orders. I would now ask that the clerk take a roll call vote on all of the items coupled on today's general orders calendar.
Abreu.
Aye.
Ariola.
Aye.
Aviles.
Aye.
Barron.
May I be excused to explain my vote?
Permission granted.
Thank you very much. Once again, I call on you, my colleagues, to get beyond whether you got a chair or not, get beyond whether you got your committee or not, and let's make sure that we do the bidding of the people of this city. They're counting on you. This is a new council, majority women. This is a new council that has progressive people in this council that when you ran for office, you were with the people and you were with progressive ideas. This is our opportunity to do that. I am disappointed on how many of you caved into the normal process of getting chairs and getting put on the speaker's leadership team. Often that compromises the bite that you have, the fight that you have for the people. I'm hoping it doesn't do that, particularly during budget time. We will have over $100 billion budget, and we will have over scores of bills that come forward, and there'll be a lot of development projects that come forward. So I just want to leave you with Dr. King, and many of you may not know this, but he had a dream in 1967, but a radical revolutionary vision by 1968 when he died. And Dr. King, by the way, was a Black radical. And Dr. King, by the way, was a socialist, a democratic socialist. And Dr. King, by the way, was anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist wars. Dr. King said, for years, I fought to reform some of the institutions of the South. A little change here, a little change there. But now I think quite differently. We need a radical rearrangement of the entire society, a revolution of values. Don't be fooled by black faces and hot, all skin are kinfolk, and everybody black doesn't necessarily have your back. Thank you, and I abstain.
Boucher.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Brewer.
Aye.
Caban.
Aye.
Carr.
Aye.
De La Rosa.
Aye.
Dinowitz.
Aye.
Farias.
Aye on all.
Felice.
Aye.
Gennaro.
I very humbly and very gratefully vote aye.
Thank you. Gutierrez.
Aye.
Hanif.
Permission to explain my vote.
Permission granted.
As a daughter of two working-class Bangladeshi and Muslim immigrants and our city's first Bangladeshi and first Muslim woman council member, I'm deeply honored to have been selected to serve as the chair of the council's Committee on Immigration. Speaker Adams, council members, thank you so much for this opportunity. Millions of immigrants call our city home, and as committee chair, I will work tirelessly to ensure their voices are heard and their rights are respected. I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues to advance legislation that embeds language justice into our city's operations and ensures New York is a true sanctuary city by cutting off all of our access points with ICE. I'm also committed to ensuring critical measures like the Our City, Our Vote and the Deliverista package are implemented effectively. We'll work with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs to strengthen services and programs that our immigrant community depends on, and fight tooth and nail to make sure that critical initiatives like Action NYC, Access Health NYC, Knife Up, and adult literacy education get the full funding they deserve. I'll also make sure the city is a vocal champion of immigrant rights on matters that fall within state and federal jurisdiction. Let's be clear, we need an immediate pathway to citizenship. We need to end immigrant detention and deportation, and we need a strengthened and ongoing excluded workers fund. I'm excited to partner with other committees to ensure that we uplift immigrant communities in all sectors of city life, including our schools, our housing, the healthcare system, the criminal legal system, and our workforce. I look forward to transforming this committee to be one that centers a gender-responsive and feminist legislative and budgetary agenda that reflects care for all immigrants. আমাদের শহর অভিবাসীদের শহর। আমি আপনাদের জন্য কাজ করব, আমরা একসঙ্গে কাজ করব, নিজেদের ক্ষমতা বাড়াবো। I'll wrap up in Bangla. Our city is an immigrant city. I'll be working for you. We will be working collectively to build immigrant power. I vote aye on all. Thank you.
Thank you. Hanks.
Aye.
Holden.
I vote aye.
Hudson.
I vote aye.
Joseph.
Aye.
Kagan. Krishnan.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lewis.
Permission to explain my vote.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Majority Leader Powers. I would like to extend my condolences to Deputy Speaker Ayala on the loss of her mother and her cousin, Kristen Nieves, Michelle Gold's family, and the entire Asian American community in New York City. I would also like to share with you all that earlier this month, the transnational Haitian community celebrated Haiti's 218th anniversary as the first Black republic on January 1st, and on January 12th, we honored the more than 300,000 Haitians that were killed during the 7.0 magnitude earthquake in 2010. We have experienced concurrent crises, but our faith and unwavering hope allows us to stand firm and to fight against odds and overcome every setback. The passage of the Haiti Development Accountability and Institutional Transparency Initiative Act, also known as HR 2471, in the US Senate commits critical support to an island and people who have been suffering from political crises, environmental disasters, and economic meltdowns for years. The bill will finally offer a sustainable pathway towards recovery for millions of Haitians struggling every day. As a daughter of Haitian Americans who represent Central Brooklyn, which many of my colleagues call home, I want to thank Senator Schumer for championing this legislation on behalf of our families abroad. Thank you, Majority Leader Powers and Madam Speaker, for this time. I vote aye.
Thank you. Marte.
Aye.
Mealy. We'll come back to Councilmember Mealy. Councilmember Menon.
Aye.
Moya.
I vote aye.
Narcisse.
May I explain my vote for a second?
Permission granted.
I'm honored to be chosen by Speaker Adams, and I'm fully ready to take my firsthand experience and do all I can to ensure that doctors, nurses, and all hospital staff have the resources available to them to provide the best health care to all New Yorkers. This is a pivotal time for our city as we continue to battle the Omicron variant of COVID-19, which has decimated our hospital, in particular, NYC Health and Hospitals Facilities and Safety Net Hospital, which is in traditionally underserved communities, need a lifeline and our immediate attention so they can flourish and not merely survive. They are on life support right now as we speak. Further, our community health centers, in my district alone, we have a large population and we don't have no hospital, no healthcare center. We need to further our centers, especially in a high-risk neighborhood, to continue and serve the people, the population they need to be served. It is deplorable that in 2022, the color of one's skin and the economic status correlate to the quality of healthcare we receive. Death rates are almost 30% higher in the poorest New York City neighborhoods than in the healthier neighborhoods. Black women are 8 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related causes than white New Yorkers. This is not acceptable in 2022. I assure you that I'm prepared to confront these issues, and I'm confident that this city council will make a sincere effort to eliminate these deadly imbalances. We must do better for our New Yorkers, and I'm ready. Thank you, Speaker Adams. And aye.
Thank you, Councilmember. Nurse.
Aye.
Jose.
Aye.
Palladino.
Aye.
Restler.
Aye.
Richardson Jordan.
Abstain.
Riley.
Aye.
Rivera.
I vote aye.
Salamanca.
I vote aye.
Sanchez.
Permission to explain my vote.
Permission granted.
At a time when our city faces an ongoing housing crisis, exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, I thank Speaker Adams and my colleagues for the opportunity to be appointed the chair of the City Council's Committee on Housing and Buildings. In the last 2 weeks, we have witnessed the devastating impact of the Twin Parks 5-alarm fire in Councilmember Felice's district, and the South Bronx fire just a few days later in Councilmember Salamanca's district, due to the neglected buildings and gas leaks claiming the lives of nearly 20 New Yorkers and neighbors. The city's affordable housing crisis disproportionately impacting low to moderate income communities and communities of color
for years has been exacerbated by the pandemic and the corresponding health and economic fallout. Only 18% of renter-occupied homes are well maintained by landlords, according to the city's Department of Health. Up to 70% of the lowest income households live in homes they cannot afford, according to the Furman Center. And nearly 300,000 evictions have been filed in the state with a lifted eviction moratorium. And our buildings still emit unsustainable levels of greenhouse gas emissions and pollution. It is in this dire context that the work of this committee and of housing advocates and of the leaders in the city of New York could not be more important. I am energized to serve alongside a speaker, a city council, and a mayor committed to working hard to protect tenants, demanding safe, healthy, quality, and affordable housing, and fighting against harassment, neglect, and speculative landlords. Thank you. I vote aye.
Thank you, Councilman. Schulman.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
Ung.
Aye.
Velasquez.
Aye.
Williams.
Permission to explain my vote.
Permission granted.
I would like to thank Madam Speaker for appointing me to chair the Committee on Civil and Human Rights. Still being in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm reminded of this quote: "Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. I am eager with love and bright light to address the many issues plaguing our city, as most can be seen as a civil or human rights violation, whether it's Black maternal health and reproductive justice, restorative justice surrounding marijuana, hate crimes, the lack of housing, or the many inequities around the delivery of government services, and much more. I look forward to working with our speaker and my colleagues to make our city a just place for all. Thank you, and I vote aye.
Thank you. Juan.
Aye.
Yeager.
Aye.
Councilmember Mealy. Vernikov. Sorry, Councilmember.
Aye.
Thank you. Borelli.
Aye.
Brooks Powers.
Permission to explain my vote.
Permission granted.
First, I'd like to extend my heartfelt condolence to Deputy Speaker Ayala. My thoughts and prayers continue to be with you during this difficult time. Also, I'd like to say thank you to Madam Speaker Adams for the opportunity to serve as the chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. As a representative of the Southeast Queens community, one of the city's transit deserts, I'm looking forward to working with key stakeholders, government partners, to ensuring a fairer, more affordable, more accessible transportation system for all across the city. I'm honored to be in this role. I'm honored to be a part of the newly formed COVID Recovery and Resiliency Program as someone who represents a community that had the second deadliest zip code at the height of this pandemic, looking to ensure that we have equitable distribution of any resources pertaining to COVID-19. And of course, it is an honor to be able to work with each one of the members in this body to move the city forward on its road to recovery. And so with that, I vote aye.
Powers.
I vote aye.
Ayala.
Permission to explain my vote.
Permission granted.
Thank you. I actually, it's been a very difficult week for my family and I, and I think I try to learn lessons in everything that happens to me. And this week I took away some lessons that I hope will help guide the work that we do this year. Crystal died at 19 years old working at Burger King overnight because she was trying to make a couple of dollars to help her mother pay bills. And that night, she didn't want to go to work because she didn't feel safe. And her mother reiterated to her the importance of her being responsible and, reminded her that she was on the schedule and nobody else would be to cover for her if she did not show up that night. And her daughter showed up, and an hour and a half later, she was shot and killed for $100. I think that the lesson that I learned there is that we're not doing enough to ensure worker safety protections. There's no reason why this 19-year-old should have been working a night shift and that the safety precautions were not put in place to ensure that she got home to her mother the following morning. I also want to express my deep appreciation to all of you who have taken the time to call me and text me and share your words of wisdom and support. I found that many of us live in the same community now and that we share in common the loss of a parent. And I think it's one of the most difficult times of my life because my mom lived with me for 10 years and I was very fortunate, and I kept looking through stories and saying, my mother lived a long life. This young girl was 19 and she was murdered at work. People died in a fire and an explosion in the Bronx. They didn't deserve to go so young, and at least I had those 10 years, but you still selfishly want your mom. Doesn't matter how old you are. So I really want to say thank you to all of you. And I think that I learned many lessons in caring for my mom, how difficult it is to be a caregiver, to have to juggle work and family, health, issues, being able to access good quality health care, being able to even get a home care worker to show up because they're underpaid and underappreciated, doing more to ensure that the most vulnerable are taken care of in the way that they deserve, regardless of where they live, regardless of their race, regardless of how much money they have or don't have in the bank. And so I will use all of those experiences and try to make my mom proud and ensure that other families don't have to endure what many of us have had to. But I really wanted to say thank you to all of you for being so kind to me and my family during this difficult time. And I will be fine. I will find my space in the next few months, years, whatever it takes, but I'll be fine. But I also wanted to thank Speaker Adams for appointing me to the General Welfare Committee. It's a committee that means a lot to me, as did mental health before it, and for personal reasons. But I think that it's important to have people in committees representing committees that have lived experiences, because I think that we have a story to tell and there's no one better to tell it than us. So thank you all. And with that, I vote aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Mealy will be joining us momentarily.
So aye on all?
Thank you, Councilmember. Speaker Adams.
I vote aye.
All items on today's general order calendar are adopted by a vote of 49 in the affirmative and 2 abstentions, and 0 in the negative. We will now move on to the introduction and reading of bills.
All bills have been referred to committee as indicated on today's agenda.
Thank you. There are no resolutions on today's calendar, so we'll now move into the general discussion, the section of the meetings for any topic that a member would like to speak about. Does anyone would like to speak in general discussion? Okay, I'll now call on Speaker Adrian Adams to close out today's stated meeting.
The stated meeting of January 20th, 2022 is hereby adjourned.
No legislation today.